And on the screen you can see Professor Jorge Romero, who is also from the Mexican University, the Metropolitan University of Mexico, and his intervention will be afterwards in Spanish. If you know the Spanish, you understand it. If not, just let us know and write this translation. So Yolanda, welcome. We are very, very proud to have you here with us and for sharing this new book. It has just been published, an analysis of the trajectory of the Mexican president, the current president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, which you have very suggestively entitled The Redeemer's Journey, La Trayectoria del Redentor in Spanish. So over to you.
Thank you very much. I prepare a small presentation. In what the book is all about. And well, as Milena said, the title of the book is The Redeemer's Journey. And I thought that was a good title because I don't as during his political work has worked on two archetypes. One was the one of the martyr of democracy, and the second one in now in power is this, the redeemer of Mexico. And he, as you know, pretended to make a huge transformation of the Mexican political system, and that transformation he called it the fourth transformation. And now you will see what. I start the book presenting. The book is about training, and about training in this very simple way is training is like having a frame in political theory, and some things are inside the frame and some things are outside the frame, and the things inside the frame emphasizes which kind of discourse the politician wants to enhance. So what I did, I started presenting the political source inspired by Obrador's thoughts, and what he considered the most important episodes of Mexican history. That was the independence, the political reform, and the revolution. The three before the one he's proposing, that is the fourth transformation, that is the regeneration of political life and fighting against corruption. So that's that's why it's called the fourth transformation of the political. So what I did in the first chapter is to present all those sources that that inspired me López Obrador's thoughts and make the frame for his whole his messages and his whole narrative during the period in opposition and also during his period in power. López Obrador, what López Obrador is a populist. And now I think you can really understand how populism, because I don't know if you're British, or to have a populist prime minister in power. And the there are two main features that characterizes the populism in a way. One is that the politician thinks that the people entitled him to act in the name of them. And the second one is that the former elites are considered the enemies of the people and also the enemies of the politician that represents the people. So the protagonic agent of change is the people, and if you're not, if you don't agree with López Obrador folks, you're against, not against him, but against the people. Keep going to the rest.
No sirve de acá. No pasa nada.
I this one. And so one of the questions that are in my book is what kind of leadership is or leadership. And what I did in order to answer the question was to present many of the concepts that and definition of leadership in political science, and to find out the truth of the way in which López Obrador understands power, and then the dilemma López Obrador has always confronted between his political discourse, defending ethical leadership, and his pragmatic exercise of power, in which he has to deal with certain things in order to get away of the ethical leadership and go into the pragmatic field in order to get things done. One of the chapters, this is about López Obrador and maybe about López Obrador biography, but what I devoted a chapter to study all the political organizations in which López Obrador has been leader or a member of. López Obrador is not a newcomer. López Obrador has been in the PRI, has been in the PRD, and he decided to design Morena as his political party in order to have the whole power of the party in the terms of a charismatic party. That is, the charismatic leader is the one who dictates all the messages, works on the organization of the party, and also decides who is who inside the party structure. So he in the parties he had been, for example, in the PRI, he was not in the head of the party, but he was in the power structures of the party. In the PRD, he was the leader of the party. And when he was the leader of the party, he decided to change the structures of the party, and did something that I find very interesting, that it was to sell the franchise of the party to people who has like a social or political capital, in order to make the party more competitive in the country. And then I go strictly to Morena, because as I told you, Morena is the organization that took López Obrador into power in 2018, and Morena is a very interesting political organization, because Morena didn't start as a party, but as a social movement, and that makes Morena completely different from the traditional parties. So what happened with Morena is, for at least 4 or 5 years, Morena was a movement centered in solidarity values, centered in a sense of identity, and centered in certain political values that make the movement like a movement for changing the political way of exercising power. And the main you can see which were the purposes. The Morena thing is Movimiento de Regeneración Nacional, that is a national, I don't know if you say regeneration movement. So, but Morena pretended was to get rid of all politicians that were abusing the power and making the political system correct. So until and the thing that that political movement was one of the reasons that not only López Obrador followers but other voters decided to make a choice for it. Well, as Elena told you, my main field of research is political discourse. So two of the chapters of the book are about political discourse. One, López Obrador discourses or messaging or narrative, whatever you want to call it, in opposition, and the other message of political discourse in power. So I say here, persuasion is about believing, and if you believing, it's about having trust of the words of the leader who's speaking with us. So in this framing that I told you at the beginning of this talk, but it's inside, it's the persuasion messages that the politician, with which the politician pretends to convince the voters about the rightness of the message. And then, as I said, using this framing theory, I present a view of his main messages, but also the outstanding changes in the message that López Obrador very cleverly made during his many years in opposition in order to maintain attention in the political arena and to maintain the expectation of his followers, and not only of his followers, but the public here, and also being able to continue being part of the national political agenda. Well, the message in the government is the main tool of the main instrument of the message in López Obrador is the press conference. In the press conference, if you study police communication, this press conference is completely different of the other press conferences, because he directly speaks to the media, and without the filter of the media, he directly speaks to the citizenship, and he, by this political tool, he can express, as I say here, his vision of politics, His, what he thinks are the main fulfillments of his government, and he blamed his enemies about the things they do to in order to not to make not to and to avoid the possibility of the whole transformation. And also he speaks about his mission as a beginning. And I'm going to end with this slide that, as I told you, López Obrador is a leader with many fine lines of exercising power. So one of those is charismatic leader. But in so charismatic leaders, he has offered many miracles to his followers. And when I was writing the book, I had the idea that confronting these miracles with reality, his popularity will decrease. But so far, my impression is that the loyalty policy is still there, and this is my impression. So what I said is to beyond that impression, it would be very convenient to do an academic survey, in order to measure the image of his presidency and the results of what he made the full transformation. So thank you very much. And now Jorge is going to make review of the book in Spanish. If you have any questions or need something to be translated, just let it be. Okay, thank you.
Well, I can do it in English if you prefer. If you, I can make my introduction in English if you prefer it. I think it's better.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh? Okay. Well, good afternoon. I'm pleased to introduce this book by Yolanda Meyenberg. I believe it's relevant and essential for understanding the phenomenon of Andrés Manuel López Obrador from a theoretical perspective, detached from the political fervor that characterizes the current debate in Mexico. The book utilized tools from the political theory to examine the shaping of López Obrador phenomenon as a strategic process that goes beyond the mere idiosyncrasies and temperament of the individual. The book stands out for deviating from the common diatribe that characterizes journalistic political analysis when addressing the topic of López Obrador and his administration. Instead, it aims to conduct a more in-depth analysis, supported by the theoretical categorizations, which are illustrated through specific examples extracted from the political discourse of the current president of Mexico throughout his career. The text is not only useful for understanding the current context of the country, but is also presented as an invaluable teaching resource for its students of political science by illustrating, through a concrete example, many of the concepts developed in recent decades in theoretical field. In this way, abstractions such as frames of reference or framing, as well as categories such as populism, acquire a tangible dimension in the work of Yolanda and comes to life in the complex process of contemporary Mexican history. Yolanda has a notable command in the field of political discourse analysis. This attribute gives the text a singular interest, since based on the words and speeches of López Obrador, she reconstructs what the author has called in the title of the book, the journey of the Redeemer journey. Meyenberg refrains from speculation in her narrative. In her place, she provides a context to what is written and expressed by the protagonist. Throughout the text, a current process of construction of a strategy and a power project is observed, with the capacity to transform into an authentic mass cult, with millions of faithful convinced of the revealed truth, which emerged in the midst of the turbulent waters of conspiracy against him. The book clearly exposed the internal coherence present in the López Obrador speech, as well as the skill with which he has forged a vision of reality shared by a vast number of Mexicans, a discourse that can be categorized, according to the terminology of Robinson Post, as paranoid, since it constructs an impeccable logic that excludes any element that could contradict it and delineates a division of the world in Schmittian terms between friends and enemies. Rightly, Meyenberg points out that López Obrador has demonstrated remarkable discipline in communicating his message. He's a fervent believer in himself and exhibits a remarkable skill as establishing emotional proximity with his support base, while at the same time distancing himself from and refuting that which contradicts his vision. If reality does not coincide with the ideal world, so much worse for the reality. In the case analyzed in the book of the speech about the pandemic, his ability to distance himself from the objective facts is evident. Despite the fact that Mexico exhibits one of the poorest health performances in the world, with one of the highest rates of excess mortality attributed to COVID, the government managed to keep a large part of the population unaware of the statistics and presented tragedy not as a result of poor public health management, but as a product of inexorable destiny. López Obrador's persistent popularity, which remains high despite the meager results of his administration, lies precisely in the coherence of the alternative reality that he has been able to build. As Yolanda narrates it, the vision of Mexican history in which he has based his own exploits is shared by a good part of the population, since it coincides with the mythology constructed by official history and transmitted by free textbooks. A Manichaean story of good and bad that López Obrador has known how to exploit very well in his speech to place his adversaries, as he liked to say, on the side of the billions, while he placed himself on the heroic path of the greats, transforming characters, Hidalgo, Juárez, Madero, and Cárdenas. Although it is not the terrain of Meyenberg, Meyenberg explores in the book, López Obrador can occupy a prominent place in Pedro Aguirre's world history of megalomania. In her final note, Yolanda gives an account of López Obrador seen by himself, a character with an iron will who has overcome adversity and has managed to overcome the traps of his enemies to become the redeemer of the good town, of the good people. He does not recognize any mistake and finally believes that he has achieved his goals. And when he has not achieved them, it has been the fault of the bad rulers of the past and his poisoned heritage. López Obrador seduced because he believes, although his faith is, as is often the case, a mere delirium. López Obrador is a product of Mexican reality. His speech resonates because he draws on the grievance of a divided society. As much as it talks about calming society, In reality, it encouraged the resentment root in half of the country's population for the conditions of exclusion and misery in which they live, while in effect, the predatory elites have benefit from political protection to maintain their privilege. López Obrador populism has found in this painful reality the breeding ground to thrive. It does not matter that, as Meyenberg says, the radicality of the narrative does not correspond to the cry of the good people to be freed from grievances. The fact is that he has been able to connect with millions of people beyond the networks of clientele fed by the distribution of cash from the social programs of his government. Yolanda's book shows the power of speech and the ability to construct a convincing perception of reality despite poor results. López Obrador government is in its final phase, and there are few tangible achievements in contrast to an institutional legacy that is clearly adverse for the country. What Mexico urgently demands is the construction of a legitimate legal order and a state equipped with the necessary capabilities to ensure security, health, education, and the provision of high-quality services, while dismantling the system of plunder, the spoil system that has characterized the Mexican state. In almost all these areas, the country has experienced a setback over the last 5 years. The Mexican state is facing a major crisis in the context where violence and territorial control by criminal organizations continue to increase. However, in López Obrador's parallel narrative, corruption has been eradicated, massacres no longer take place, and the health systems is moving toward parity with that of Denmark. López Obrador's narratives has triumphed among a large part of the population, hence the relevance of the discursive analysis that Meyenberg presents to us in her book. Since politics is usually a game of mirrors, where it's sometimes difficult to distinguish reality from its imaginary reflections. Bien.
Thank you. Thank you for if you have any questions or comments or impressions. Yes.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Very today we also have a little bit of Barcelona, financial research on the indicators, because basically gate realities are I would like to listen to this. Can you hear me? So my question is more about methods. What do you mean by narrative? Because all the searches in the narrative is the different things. So I was interested in your opinion.
I can't hear clearly. I can't hear clear. It's not clear. The sound is not clear.
Narrative.
Yes.
Okay.
What do you mean by narrative?
For Yolanda or for
Both.
For both. Okay.
When I think by narrative art, it's not my definition, but it's like what I think about and what I have read about political. I think that narrative is like in literature, something that is designed to be told. Yes. And in political narrative, this is about power and authority. And what political science is doing now is taking, like borrowing from literature, some codes that can be applied to political narrative, like having a character, having an argument, having enemies, because without any conflict, we will have a narrative. And having certain clear messages that can make this like story coming together. Like, and it's like a very short definition of narrative, but I think that's okay. I have no way that we've done it. Very to the whole thing about what you have to think about narrative. If you give me your mail, I'll send you the reference because it's very, very late. I don't have a reference in mind, but it's, I think it will work for you. And it worked for me because it both, like, both in the beginning and the end of comparing narrative in literature and narrative in general. So I think that will this will happen. But basically is having a story, having a character, having like enemies, and having something like letting go, the goal of, for example, in political speeches is changing. I think you have to have a motive, and that motive is not a rational motive, it's an emotional motive. You have to move the feelings of your followers, and that will make you, this narrative of the 4 key is that, okay?
Yeah. Well, I agree with Yolanda. The narrative is the way in which storytelling can shape the reality, no? And can shape the facts and impact the understanding of reality. It's also a tool, no? It's employed by political figures in order to construct the perspective of people with their environment, you know? And as a result, fiction has the potential to become fact and myths become intertwined into public discourse. I think that this concept of a political narrative is very important to understand the phenomenon of López Obrador as a leader.
And the narrative, the first chapter, what I do with the framing is trying to show the readers which are the main sources of the narrative. The very important episodes of Mexican history, the former populist thought that was shaped during Cardenas' period, that it was the populist presidents or excellence. And what else did I do? Well, this fight against corruption and the need of a charismatic leader that leads this movement towards the real change. And yes.
Hi, thank you. I'm Mexican. I have a bit of I have always been puzzled by the decision of López Obrador to during his government as a president to go after some other social groups with similar grievances than the ones with similar. He's going after some social groups with some similar grievances, minorities. I'm thinking about this has been very tough on the feminist movement, on some worker unions, some traditional teachers unions. Narrative. How do you see this? I don't want to call it critique of other social groups. How do you see it into his core narrative strategy? Because some of them were
No, I think it's not it's not the groups what you have to focus
The ones.
all the people against the way he thinks and the reality has been shaped. So, for example, feminism, yes, he has something to say about against feminism, but he is the president that has, I think, the most number, the very important number of women in the cabinet. So, and now the candidate of Morena is a woman. So it's, yes, and he, what makes López Obrador a very interesting character is that he says what he thinks, and he doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about being politically correct. No? If he has to speak about against women in a certain period because he thinks that women are against his movement or against the people, he's not saying that. And for example, with priests, no, when the priest was killed, I don't, it was in Veracruz.
Mhm.
Coahuila, yes.
Coahuila.
And then the priest wrote a letter to the Obrador telling him that he has to be more careful about security. And he said, no, these priests are part of the former elites and they are against me. No? So it's but if that's a part of his pragmatic leadership. If in a certain time he needs to have the priest in his table, he is going to go no, it's sort of, oh, so it's interesting and intelligent and they are working for the people. So it's part of his pragmatic leadership. I think Juan López Obrador is very good. I'm not the López Obradorista at all, but I think it's a very good pragmatic leader. Okay.
No, I'm agree. I don't have too much to say.
Pragmatism is the name of the game. But he's always speaking about the ethics of politics. No? He doesn't practice the ethics of politics, but is part of the very important part of this message.
Yeah, I mean,
Someone else? Questions? No? Jorge, do you want to say something else?
no. Well, thank you very much for the invitation to introduce your book. I think it's very useful, and I think it's a very good work of discourse analysis. And as I said, it's useful for the students. No, it's a very useful tool for teach.
And I also, what I try to do is to make something between the academic part of the book and also a book that can be read by all public. Not only, it's not only for students, not only for academics, but books that if your uncle or your aunt or your mother or whatever wants to read, I hope they can enjoy it and understand. Okay. Gracias, te agradezco mucho.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Hasta luego. Sí, todos.
And I hope you read.
Pero.
It's not so rigid, no? It has some like certain concepts, no?